Peace, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of our Please Ask campaign. As a refresher, the Please Ask campaign is a community engagement campaign to bring awareness to childhood sexual abuse, empowering people in children's lives to please ask children questions to help determine abuse and to end a child's silent suffering. So this campaign was created by Journey to Self Inc., which is a 501c3 nonprofit based in Georgia. Journey to Self serves as a resource, a safe space. I house my personal blog site there. We also have our child empowerment program. So overall, we are a community focused on self-healing, self-discovery, and motivation. I am Aniqua A. Cree. I am the founder and executive director of Journey to Self, or J2S, as I like to call it. And I am so thrilled to have Betsy with me today, leading some of day 2's conversation surrounding what it is like being a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. But before we begin, let me remind everyone who is viewing right now that some information you may hear throughout this campaign may be triggering. So if you believe that you and or someone you know has experienced sexual abuse, please call the National Sexual Abuse Hotline. Their phone number is 1-800-656 4673. And then, of course, you have support from other organizations like Journey to Self and Betsy. And I'll also be sure to just tag our social media accounts so that you could feel free to reach out. Besides that, I also just want to highlight the fact that this is day 2 of our campaign. If you did not see day 1, please check out our social medias, Facebook, IG, as well as YouTube to get caught up. So now, Betsy, can you please tell everyone who's viewing a little about who you are?
First, I want to say thank you so much, Aniqua, for extending this invitation so that I can be a part of this campaign with you and the community of Journey to Self and all of the individuals that will become part of this beautiful community. And I just want to say that I'm grateful. And I would just want to start off with saying thank you so much for this
opportunity. I appreciate that. Yes. Look, thank you for being a part of it and helping, uplift everything that we're going to discuss today.
Thank you. So to all of us who are joining, my name is Betsy Perez, and I am here in New York City. I was born in the island of the Dominican Republic, Haiti, and I was raised in the South Bronx. And I experienced sexual trauma while living in the South Bronx from family members and also individuals that were close to the family from about the ages of 4 and 5 up until 10 years old at various points throughout my childhood. And later on, I experienced in my childhood some severe mental health issues that really followed me into my adulthood. And once I became an adult, I had experienced throughout that time some really great support in terms of the arts community. I became a playwright and I began writing ensembles with other beautiful women here and was able to, men and women actually, and was able to really tap into sexual health education in order to raise awareness about STIs and STDs and the LGBTQ and what is IA plus community. Right. And throughout that time, I was very aware and I was very in tune with the fact that I was sexually abused. So a lot of my stories and a lot of my monologues were really centered around the effects and the healing around that. But little did I know that it was really the path that I took through the art And through using the arts as advocacy, that was actually going to lead me down a road of confrontation with myself and reconciliation with myself, and understanding that, wow, this isn't just something that happened to me in my past. This is something that's obviously still living in me very viscerally. And it eventually just led to a really huge stop. And for me to really heal in the way that I then began starting to share in my own personal blog at the time that was Building Busy. And then and then it turned into later on what I'm now positioning myself as sexual reparenting for myself.
Right.
So about me.
Yes, thank you so much for just sharing that background, and of course, you and I, we've connected, especially as we spoke about this opportunity to come together and just really empower our communities. So, as you know, J2S, we're just very intentional about referring to individuals who have experienced sexual abuse and trauma as a survivor. I personally believe that it has a positive effect on our emotional state. So, can you share with us some emotional effects that being sexually abused can have on a person?
Of course. That's so interesting because when I was a child, and being so in tune with the things that were happening, and just having also a very huge spiritual foundation as well.
Right.
And also thinking that I was grown, right? Because I was doing grown things. So
right.
I felt that I was grown, and I really I didn't want to be a child, right? You get kind of, oh, you have such an old soul and all of these things and
yes.
right? Which can be kind of a setup if you don't really understand that within context.
So true. Oh my gosh. So true.
When I got to an adult, and when I turned 23 years old, and after I had written this monologue called Family Owned Business, and I realized that I was a victim of something, right? Because I began to be very emotionally dysregulated. I was having outbursts. I was unable to really manage the relationships that I was having. I was having outbursts at work. I was forgetting the time of the day. And I wasn't myself. There was something that was happening. But I had amassed this strength, right? That it was like, well, I was sexually abused. And I know that, I use sex as a way to feel loved. And because I had such a history with social workers and mental health workers and all of these things, like I thought that I knew what was good, right? And I thought that I knew what was happening. But what was missing there was acknowledging that I was victimized. Because did I know that I was a survivor of it? Yes. But it almost kind of, I went from like point B without really realizing point A, point A and a half, and then to B. Right. So for me, before, I was part of the emotional effects of accepting that I was victimized. Not so much that I'm a victim today, but more that I was victimized in my childhood was really difficult for me emotionally, because it was to say that one, I wasn't protected, or something must have been fractured in my communal or my family circle of some sort. So so because I was victimized, but I didn't really understand what it meant to be victimized as a child, or that was even like an idea, because
Right.
in Dominican culture, right, you as a
Mm-hmm.
kid have nothing to be mad about, sad about, worried about, because you are just a child, right? So
Yes,
the lived
same here.
right? The lived experience of children are not honored. And because the way that my lived experience as a child was not honored, and it wasn't
Right.
modeled in a way where somebody gave it the emotional care that it needed, when I became an adult and throughout my adolescence and into my adulthood, I, without realizing, was modeling those same
Mm-hmm.
responses of, well, there's really nothing happening to you. You don't got nothing to be mad about.
Right.
Keep going, right? Because what's hurting is not the adult per se, but it's the unresolved sexually wounded child that was living inside of me, that was aching and was coming out in the forms of emotions that I was
Right.
unable to process. So one of those emotional effects was the low self-esteem, was the low self-worth, was the limited vocabulary and the limited skill of
Right.
processing those very difficult emotions that were living in my body and in my nervous system, which I didn't know until well into my adulthood. And that
Mm-hmm.
I started to really intentionally understand what is that emotional connection to my body and childhood, and what do all of these things mean when you bring them all together in one place.
Yes, there were so many parallels in everything that you just shared, compared to my personal story and my life as well. I know, and I don't even think you and I spoke about this before, but for me, I grew up, I was a product, as they say, of a teenage pregnancy. So my mom, she was 17 when she had me. So she was still on her journey of trying to learn and grow, as a person and as a goddess. So I spent so much time alone, and so much time somewhat being the parent too. And later in my childhood, she actually ended up having some physical illnesses that then put me into this caregiver role. So I think for me personally, as it relates to my encounters with childhood sexual abuse, I never had anyone to talk to me, to ask me, these questions, which is why the Please Ask campaign exists now. But also, being that adult, as a child, and not really feeling like I have time to like feel my feelings because I'm so busy caring for those around me. I think that led to so much suppression. And so looking back on what I encountered, under the age of 5 from a relative, I realized, whoa, Aniqua, there were so many emotional signs, whether it was the isolation, wanting to pull back and not really visit different relatives' homes, out of that fear. Or as you stated too, always having that you're such a mature child, or you're such an old soul, you've been here before, make me feel like, well, can I complain about things? Like, I want to make sure I keep it together. I want to keep up this image. So for me, as it relates to just the emotional effects of childhood sexual abuse and trauma, I would say definitely the self-esteem, the self-confidence, looking for love in the wrong places, not necessarily understanding who love should come from, like when it is appropriate. Those different types of things definitely played a part, for me. And still, in some capacity plays a part today. And just sticking to that topic a little bit, I want to switch gears to talk about the physical effects. Was there any physical effects that you noticed or that you are noticing as you're on your journey?
Oh, yeah. One of the biggest physical effects that I realized throughout time, and
Mhm.
also recently as well, was that one, my digestive issues were, they were
Oh,
up the wazoo, digestive issues,
yes.
um, the up and down and in the weight, my, the emotional eating and just
Oh my
like
goodness.
physically I would feel, often lethargic, or I would yo-yo with my weight where, and right, and connected to that emotionality of the emotional effects. However,
Right.
I suffered a lot with um starving myself so that I wouldn't be seen, right? And in that
Right.
extreme. And then also eating to the point where I also didn't want to be attractive.
Right. Oh,
So
yes.
having living in those extremes with my physical body created so much turmoil within
Mm,
me, where I was either too stuffed to move or too undernourished to move or to do anything,
right.
to think, right? And then so that was something, the way that I ate and the way that I physically felt. And then understanding the impacts of cortisol throughout a lifetime for adults who have experienced childhood sexual trauma. And it's because, those cortisol levels, right, which is a stress hormone, which is important for us, so
Uh-huh.
that it's important for when you need that edge to kind of get
Right.
going, to get going, or for when you are in danger and whatnot. However, when you are a child and you are under that physiological stress, and oftentimes we know, and Aniqua, that most of the times the individuals who sexually harm children are people that people who are
Right.
in your close proximity that you're seeing ever so often. And
Mm-hmm.
so then these children, right, are in a constant state of stress, and the body physiologically doesn't have its time to
Right.
relax, to regulate, to get back into that space, to bring blood flow to the other parts of your body, to your brain, to your gut,
Right.
the things that you need on a daily to live, right, and to live
Yes.
optimally. So when you go through life in a physiological stressful state, you begin to think that that's your baseline. So what I realized was that the way that I was responding to things, though physiologically, there were times when I couldn't even leave my house because
Wow.
I was so in a state of panic. I was having panic attacks.
Mm,
Physiologically, right, in a holistic way, the way that my home looked, my
right.
home was forever trashed because physically I didn't have the energy to even clean my space. Like how? You know,
Right. Oh,
physically sometimes I would go days without a shower because I just didn't have the energy. And it just the stress and the inability to really understand and thinking this is just the way that I am, when in reality what I was realizing is that my body just needed to chill and to
right.
kind
Oh,
of numb out, which is counteractive to the culture that we live in the society that we live in,
mhm.
especially here in the States, and the go, go, go culture. So
Right.
that can really come up against some of like the emotions of self-worth and kind of amplify that, when in reality, right, oftentimes what I have found is, as someone who experienced childhood sexual trauma and going through the process of really restoring myself physically, was that I needed that rest. I
Right.
can't get around it. And that's also reasons why adult survivors of sexual trauma, they have higher rates of diabetes, of heart
Mm,
disease, of fibromyalgia, of autoimmune diseases, because you're living in a state of high cortisol, of high stress throughout time. And because we are so silent, and there's really not a lot of conversation around root causes of these
exactly.
autoimmune deficiencies and diabetes and heart problems, in a very integrative, holistic way, we kind of just get stuck in and being prisoners sometimes of our PTSD, of our CPTSD, and really unresolved problems. And then we think that's our baseline when it's not.
Right. Right. Oh my gosh, you just made so many light bulbs and just connections go off within me. Thank you so much just for that insight because I too struggle just like with caring for myself physically, especially my relationship with food.
Mm.
And I've always tied it to just whatever my emotional state is, you know, like if I am not feeling energetic or if I am just having one of my depressive episodes, then I know I'm somewhat binge eating and pouring just negative things into my body. But I never actually connected it to my childhood trauma. And so, with you sharing that and just connecting the research and the science behind it all, I'm like, oh my God, it just makes so much sense. And something new for me as I'm on just this healing journey is actually being more present. So, a huge just mechanism for me going through sexual abuse as a child and not having anybody to confide in or talk to guide or help me heal, I detached. Like, I was so unaware of what was actually physically, you know, taking place because emotionally, an equal just was not there. So
Mhm.
it was it I'm trying to just put it all into words. I feel like it's so much of my childhood, Betsy, and so much of even, you know, my teenage years that I can't even remember
Mhm.
for the simple fact that I was not present, you know? And so when I think about the physical effects that being abused as a child had on me, it takes me meditating, you know, now and connecting and forgiving and reminding myself that I am this spiritual being, you know, that is here in this vessel and operating and then just pouring into myself and touching on myself. Before we started our conversation today, I was telling you how I'm giving so much love to just my root chakra and my sacral chakra and my solar plexus chakra, all of those just self-love places, those grounding places that make you feel present, is definitely a key focus for me. And of course, with Journey to Self being a spiritual organization that is committed to empowering our communities of color to go within and actually heal on this holistic level that you just spoke about, so that we can reach true self-discovery, I want to talk a little bit about spirituality.
Mhm.
And I want to ask you, how has spirituality played a role in your journey, especially as it relates to being a survivor of childhood sexual abuse?
Well, that's always a a space for me that is really where a lot of my work is rooted in, and in expanding our idea of sexual energy. And
Right.
I didn't say it in the beginning. I don't know why I kind of think, but I'm a sex educator and I do integrative sex education.
Yes.
And I think I was just like in the mind, I was so excited.
Right. And look, you're so awesome on so many aspects. So it's
And being present, right? Because that's the huge part of sexual energy, and
yes.
being present and materializing. And part of the reason why I focus so much on adult survivors of sexual trauma in their childhood, really connecting to their sexuality and understanding sex in a metaphysical way, it's
Mm,
because this was a sexual injury. This was an
right.
injury to your sexual self being because of your body, right? Because
Right.
of your spirit, because then you have a what I call, you know, we have fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and you know the responses. And I say, you know, you didn't freeze, right? Your body froze, but you had a spiritual ejection, right?
Yeah.
Now where that spiritual ejection it took place, right? That's the point of taking a strength-based approach and feeling where it is, where are you in your body, where are you
Right.
spiritually, where's your inner child, where is that part of you that's in you, so that you can then locate that part of you. Because I there is the sense of feeling spiritually broken, or
Mhm.
like something was stolen from you. And I believe that our innocence, and there's nothing broken about us. We may have been
Right.
spiritually injured, we may have been physically injured. However, we have remained whole. And so for me, being tapped into your body and understanding that your body is housing your spirit, that your spirit is within you, and understanding how to connect to your pussy and to your breasts and to all these parts of yourself that help bring you forth and help bring the world forth. And as we know it, I think that is important. And my being someone that it practices lukumi, which is what some people as Santeria, and lukumi is a Yoruban African tradition that was synchronized in Cuba. So,
wow.
And also being initiated in Palo through the Rama Briyumba, which is an African tradition system that is from West Africa, from the Congo. We have a saying, buen sombra, buen enseñanza, meaning literally good shadow, good teachings, right?
Oh, wow.
So one of the things that has really allowed me to really dig into what is considered shadow work, right? Which
right.
We are literally born with your shadow. And I believed that looking at my inner child, right, who's for all intents and purposes living in the shadows, right, because it's living with the things that I have experienced. It is right, where depending on where you stand with the light, your shadow is reflecting, right, and is coming up in different directions. So my inner child, right, is in my shadow, but is always living with me. And also, I know I am able to teach that shadow that walks with me. I'm able to give it good teaching. So I'm able to learn from my inner child those teachings, that it's not just what we experience and what we suffered, but also what are the beauties of having been that child, having been that imaginative child. Even if you don't remember, right, there's a beauty in not remembering, because then you have the ability to reimagine possibly, right? So
true. Wow.
So there are these things that it really brought with me from the Palo perspective. And then from the Lukumi perspective, what really like guided me and saved me many times was the patakis. The patakis are stories that are of the Orisha. And the Orisha, they're not just Obatala or Chango or Ya or Elegua or Chun in these very obsolete ways, in the ways that we speak of them in popular culture. They have different paths. They've walked different paths. They have lives, right? So you read about the lives of these saints, right? These orishas, these santos, and they've had such human lives, right? There's Obatala lost his head, right? He was drunk one time and made mistakes, right? There's the story of Yemaya, of a past life of Yemaya who committed suicide. And then to think that here are these beautiful entities, right? These mediators between us and God, and they have had such turmoil in their lives, and still they're venerated, still they're beautiful, still they're whole.
Exactly.
Right? They have walked their different paths. So if I'm an image of that, right, then I'm allowed to walk my different paths and remain whole. So in that sense, right, and then I can't forget about my Bovadat and my lineage and ancestry and my spiritual square, and understanding that they have walked their lives. The people that have my ancestors, my direct lineage, they have walked their lives, but they still nevertheless deserve water, candle and prayer, the same way that we deserve water, light, and prayer, right, for our daily life. So for me, a lot of my own practices and the things that I've been initiated in and that I study and that I live by have really been a foundation for the way that I healed integratively, where I didn't leave a part of myself out. I took the fucked up shit with the good stuff, and because it's all important. all medicine. Queen Afua says the bitters are better, and that does not, exclude life's bitter moments.
Right.
Sometimes though that's where the medicine is, and we just need, as adults who have experienced this, we just need the skills. We just need the skills to
Exactly.
with ourselves. That's really all.
Oh my gosh, everything. Listen, I can't wait to just save this and replay it for myself again later because you are dropping just so much amazing information, Betsy. Oh my gosh. And of course, as I stated, a little earlier in our conversation with Journey to Self being this spiritual organization, where we're really trying to help individuals pour into themselves while creating these safe spaces, so we can have these conversations and talk about how to actually do that, whether it's through shadow work and meditating and just all of these beautiful mechanisms that we have. So I'm just so happy that you shared that. And you're just enlightening, everyone who is watching. And I also want to switch gears a little bit. So earlier in our conversation, I shared how under the age of 5, I was experiencing sexual trauma from a relative that I was actually residing with at that time. And of course, going through this and not really speaking about it until I was about 29. And I started, this journey of where I am embracing my shadows, as you just stated, and I'm becoming one with myself and I'm loving all of it. Okay. The good, the bad, even the uncertainty. It's like I welcome it all because I know as long as I'm coming from a place of healing and a place from love, all good things are going to just come back to me. So why not embrace this trauma? Why not embrace this pain? Because at the end of the day, it's going to get me to that next level, that next higher frequency, if you will. But however, with that being said, there is such a huge theory and like negative connotation surrounding why survivors do not speak up as it relates to immediately, after the sexual abuse takes place. And I told you how for several years, decades really, I went through this feeling of detachment, which affected my memory and things of that nature. So it wasn't until I was 29 that I even started to speak about my experience, mostly because I had forgotten. I buried it so deep. I wanted to push through, it was so much responsibility that I still needed to get done that I wasn't really taking that step back and pouring into myself to even remember. So I'm so grateful for this self-awareness now, and this bravery of going on this healing journey and talking about it and sharing it and creating Journey to Self so that individuals like us, can come together and just really help heal our communities. But what are your personal opinions, thoughts, and expertise as it relates to why individuals don't speak up about sexual abuse?
And you said some of the points, right?
Yeah.
That some children don't remember, and because it's so buried, right? And
Right.
talk about the way that our body works. Our body is it may seem like a betrayal of some sort. However, it's our body taking care of us. We just don't know that yet. And I think that one of the reasons why I didn't say anything, right, was because I didn't have a safe home.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't feel like my parents were safe individuals to share things with. Along with the sexual abuse, right? My parents, they were good for whipping you like with a belt.
Right.
I mean, I had a very after a certain time, I felt fearful of my parents and my family. So I didn't really have a safe space. So oftentimes too, I could speak for in Dominican culture, children don't feel safe with their own parents.
Right.
Physically.
Wow.
Right.
That is so true.
So if So, because then, right, how many times have you not gotten yelled at because you almost ran into the street or you were unsafe? Because we have parents who are also emotionally limited with their skills to process their own emotions, their own thoughts, their own mental health. So then
exactly.
they cannot, they have, not that they have very limited ability to process how do we deal with this. And then also just if usually, right, children who have been sexually abused oftentimes have parents who have been sexually abused, right? So
Exactly.
then there is no so sometimes it's that kids don't tell, but parents don't tell.
Right. Oh,
Well,
that is so
sometimes
powerful.
kids do tell their parents, but their parents are the ones that don't tell others. And then
Right.
it stays in the family. And then if it stays in the family, it just becomes part of the family fabric. And it's
Right.
not a G thing, you know?
Yep.
So then you have these conversations of like, well, I did tell you, but nothing ever happened. So since nothing ever happens, then you bury the lack of response sometimes. But
Yes.
oftentimes, just it's parents are sexually uneducated, families are sexually uneducated and aren't able to really understand what Please Ask campaign, right?
Right.
Understand what to look for, how to deal with children, even if you do not want to go into the justice system, but how to just deal with a child who has been sexually harmed and will
Exactly.
deal with this throughout some point throughout their life while they are under your care. So I know that a huge thing is that, right, is that, and the fear that
Right.
these children sometimes they get in trouble or they don't even know what they're doing, because if an adult is telling you, oh, we're playing or we're exercising
Right.
or we're doing this or this is, I'm just showing you love, right?
Yep.
How do you know, right? Because then there is that guilt of sometimes for some children it's physically pleasurable.
Right.
So then they are confused about that and they want to do more of that. And then also sometimes kids, and they then practice that with other children. So then the
Right.
guilt of knowing that you may have done something was done wrong to you, but then you did it to somebody else, that then kind of
Exactly.
gets coalesced within you, which was something that happened to me. I then did that to like my other cousins and like not understanding until I realized, oh my God, like what am I doing? Like, and I was only a kid, and then I'm like, this is not right. But then someone was doing it to me. But so then now you're with this very tangled web of guilt
Right.
and victimization, and then there's no one to process it because who are you to defy an adult? And you do what adults tell you to do. You have
Right.
to say. So oftentimes I just mainly do think that we, as children, don't have safe homes to speak in. We're not having constant conversations with our kids and asking them how they're doing. That's
So
fairly
true.
That's something that our generation is really pushing for. So then
Right.
about years of not talking to children, and now you don't even know how to talk to yourself, but you're practicing to talk to your kid, and it becomes a thing. So I think
Yes.
it's a generation of the lack of an ability to process emotions and lack of intimacy within the family.
Right. I agree with that 1000%, on a very personal level too, because as a survivor of childhood sexual abuse and a mother, of two beautiful goddesses. I have an 8-year-old and I have a 2-year-old. And so I got to a point, and this was before like my spiritual awakening and my connection with self. But I got to a point where I started to just let my daughter in some. Luckily, I have a Taurus. Her sun sign is a Taurus, so she's very outspoken, and her moon sign is an Aries. So I'm like, oh, listen, right. So she's always just ready. So maybe at the age of, I would say, 4, I think she was about 4. I noticed exactly what you said. She seemed very unsure whenever she wanted to like have a conversation with me, like what mood is mommy in today, you know? And so seeing that hesitation or seeing like her discomfort with opening up to me made me take a step back. And then I reflected on the relationship I had with my mom and how it was not easy to speak with her, you know, whether it was a fear or even a happiness or a win. I just did not really know how to communicate effectively with her because I never knew which mommy I was going to get that day. And it really made me see the similarities, you know, in how I was parenting my daughter. And even though I had this goal of, I am going to be nothing like my mom, those traumas, that generational curse of not healing and talking and connecting within the family was still, you know, happening in real time with my daughter. And so I literally sat her down one day, Betsy, and I told her all of this. I'm like, you know what, Naya, I know you're only 4, but it's really time that we start talking more. You know, mommy, I'm not perfect. And I go through these moments where sometimes I'm scared and sometimes I'm sad, you know, and there's so much that I have inside of me that I'm not really talking about. And because I'm hiding, you know, from myself, it's hard for me to be there for you. And so what I want to do is learn how to do both. I want to learn how to heal boldly in front of you so that you can see me, you know, in my true authenticity, but also so that you can connect more with me, you know, because there is so much going on in your life and there is so much that you're going to experience, and I want to be there. Like, I don't want you to feel alone. And so that conversation led to her telling me about so many things that I had no idea she knew about. And sex was actually one of those topics. She shared how there was a student in one of her classes, and he was talking about like basically a sexual encounter that he had with an older cousin. And so I was just like, wait, so at the age of like 4, you know what sex is? And that literally made me take a moment because I'm like, how am I going to protect my child, you know, from this world or from this possible abuse that so many women in my family have experienced without even talking to her about sex, you know, like what is going on? So literally at the age of 4, I'm trembling, don't know what to say to her, the right things, when I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to let whatever come out, come out. And we're going to have this open dialogue, you know, where she can ask questions and I can ask questions until I feel like we're both at this place where new knowledge is being formed. And while it was so uncomfortable, she still to this day talks about the fact that she's so happy she can talk to me about anything. And it makes me feel good. And again, what's the reason why Please Ask was created? Because I'm like, I'm not the only parent, you know, that has this weird type discomfort when it comes to educating your kids about what sex is in order to protect them, you know, at the same time from sexual abuse. How are we going to know something unhealthy, you know, or traumatic is happening to us if we don't even know about our bodies and if we don't even know what sex is? So being able to face those fears in real time, especially as a parent, and take your kids on that healing journey with you is a great way that I'm trying to break these generational curses. I can hear my ancestors like cheering, like, girl, yes, like this is what, you know, our bloodline has needed for so long. So hopefully, you know, I feel real good and optimistic about it. But the more we do these campaigns and the more we have these conversations, we can start empowering parents and we can start empowering survivors of sexual abuse to please ask, you know, to talk to our babies. And even if we're not comfortable reaching out to these connections and to these experts who have the voice, you know, to do it for us, to just guide some of those conversations.
Yeah.
So yes, I just wanted to share that little piece because with everything you said
Yeah,
brought that up. Yes, yes. So we somewhat answered this question a little bit, but I still want to uplift it. Betsy, why do you think our Please Ask campaign is so needed, especially right now with all that's going on in our world? And then, of course, what else would you like to share with our viewers as it relates to life after sexual trauma?
The-
Yes.
I'm just soaking it all in.
Right. I literally have candles. I did breath work before we connected today. I'm just like, I'm ready for the energy, but I know we're going very deep,
Yeah.
in this conversation.
The Please Ask campaign is pivotal to
Mhm.
where we are today, because think about how many people asked you how you were doing as a child.
Right.
And right now, more than ever, with the way that intimacy and touch has been regulated, for lack of a better
Mhm.
term, right,
Yeah.
in a very politicized way, this is the time where you want to ask your children about the way they want to interact intimately with others. This is the
Yes.
perfect time, as the world is going through a reset with the way that we touch, the way that we interact in boundaries, right?
Right.
This is the time to ask, how can we move forward together anew with our children? Our children are in our homes more than ever. Before, they were at least 6 to 8 hours at school. Now
Right.
they have been all day at home for the most part, right? And then
Yes.
so often you may, depending on where the way the world goes, they may be at your house at more than just the summertime at a time. There may be an
Yes.
extra 2 to 3 months on top of that. And this is the time to really understand, what does it mean to touch? What does it mean to
Exactly.
be intimate? What does being physical with the people that you love mean? And what does it mean to your children, who right now may be limited in the way that they play with others, which right
Right.
now are probably starving for intimacy, because touch is the first sense that is developed by the
Right.
child.
Oh
You
my
can't
gosh.
live without touch. And if our children's sense of touch is being tainted with
Mhm.
pain and hurt and confusion, that
Right.
is going to set us up for a more malnourished society. Our children are the ones that we need to ask about their thoughts and their imaginations and what they
Right.
love and what they feel. And that comes with sexual energy. We can't get around it. We
So
can't get
true.
around it. And we have the power to educate ourselves about, what does it mean to have sexual energy? What does it mean to be sensual? Our children are sensual. Our children are erotic beings who can teach us, if we just are willing to sit with ourselves and our own discomforts with our sensuality,
Right.
and are able to translate that to your child as you see fit. But nevertheless, we have to, shift that trajectory of how we interact, how do we touch, how are we intimate with each other, and especially with our children, hugging our children, putting our hands on their shoulders, being able
Right.
to just lovingly be in touch with them. And
Exactly.
that is, for me, why it's so important to really take part in this campaign, and to really consider what is being shared in these 5 days, and what is Journey to Self really telling us, right? About being
Right.
in touch with ourselves, so that we can be in touch with our little selves, the
That
extended universe, right?
yes.
It's
All
all.
of that. Oh my
So
gosh.
just think about, when's the last time, when you were a child, how many people asked how you were doing? And I
Right.
think that if you think about that, and throughout your adolescence, how many people were really asking you, how are you?
Exactly.
I think that that's, for me, the reason why we have the opportunity to shift that, to ask our children, how are you?
Right. Oh my gosh. That is so powerful. Wow, Betsy. Like I am literally just at a loss for words. One, I'm taking everything in. And then two, it's bringing up so many like memories and connections for me. And I know another thing that I've dealt with just on this journey, and especially trying to connect back with self, is how, as a mom, as a parent, when you're going through trauma, especially suppressed trauma that you are not really quite sure how to heal from, you can, in a sense, become emotionally unavailable. And so, what I mean by that is everything you just shared, being able to connect with your kids, hug them, cuddle with them and spend that physical touching time together. It was something that I struggled with for quite a long time. And it actually took, and it's funny because, I'm a mom of two now. So my youngest gets like this self-aware mom who, is able to teach her about her confidence and her voice while she's two. But my oldest, she was the one who called me out on a lot of my stuff. She's like, Mommy, I don't even want to cry in front of you because I've never really seen you cry, in oh yes,
Little mama.
my baby don't play. And it really helps me see how, one, everything is connected. Literally, it's all connected. And she was gifted to me at the right time in my life because I needed her just as much as she needed me. I needed her to be this mirror and this reflection to help me see the healing that I needed to do in order to protect her, in order to allow her to heal too. Because while she may not have physically endured sexual trauma, she had a mom, who did, and she had a grandmother, and a great grandmother who did. So, yes, everything that you said, the significance and the importance of healing and being a part of Journey to Self, and putting in the self work really goes a long way, especially as it relates to pouring into our youth, which is also why we have our child empowerment program. We're just trying to hit it from all aspects, like let's teach them about the power of their voice and the power of affirming and affirmations, as early as we can. So that way, not only do you have a healed parent or a healed mom and a healed dad, but you have a healed unit, a healed community. So thank you. Thank you so much for uplifting that. And there is always, just every time we connect, Betsy, it's always just a huge healing that takes place throughout our conversation. I'm always excited to share space with you. I thank you more than words can even come together, to form just how grateful I am for your story, for your teaching, and just the light that you've brought. I feel empowered. I can only imagine, the individuals who view this, all that they will gain from it. So how can we continue to follow you in your journey after today?
I want to say thank you so much. This was so healing for me and so restorative for me. It continues to restore my confidence in being able to be a mother, which is something that I have a very tangled journey with.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you so much for being such a point of light and of love and of possibility for women who, and fathers, right? People who
Right.
are parents who desire to be parents, who have maybe interfered in their ability to be a parent,
Yeah.
in whatever way, shape, or form, because hearing your story really is something so powerful and so dynamic for me, and it just does so many things for me when I hear of mothers and fathers parenting even while healing and
Right.
confronting this particular experience that they had when they were children. And so I just want to thank you so much, and I wanted to be very specific about that. And
Oh, I
so
appreciate
I'm
that.
so I feel so loved. Um,
Yes.
so I just wanted to say thank you, and thank you everyone who has sat with us and who has sat with your little children and your
Yeah.
own inner adolescents, to really take this in from the both of us. And I can't wait until, there's conversation under this and see
Right.
everyone's experiences and things like that. So you can find me at My Body of Words on Instagram, and at Papaya Om, papaya, the way that the fruit is spelled, and Om, O-M, for the Sanskrit word. And yeah, that's kind of like where you can find me right
Yeah.
now.
And I will definitely be tagging that in this post, so that way everyone can just easily get over to your pages and to your sites. So I am just so happy. Thank you for pouring into me. Thank you for uplifting me, and Journey to Self. This
Yes.
Please Ask campaign is off to an amazing start. I'm looking forward to just the rest of the week and all of the content and resources that will be shared across our platforms. And as I mentioned earlier, this is day 2 of Journey to Self's Please Ask campaign. We will continue to have some life-changing and healing conversations throughout today. So everyone, just be sure that you actually follow us on our social medias, IG, Facebook, YouTube, just so you can stay present and join the conversation. And of course, as I leave, I want to encourage everybody that is in a child's life right now, whether you are a parent, a teacher, a mentor, a friend, a brother, a sister, whatever, your connection is, to please ask. So much healing comes from conversation. So take that time out to pour positivity into yourself and into our future, into our babies. And please ask. Thank you so much, Betsy. I appreciate everything you gave today. And peace, everyone.